Hello, good morning. It is Monday, September 28th, and I'm Jason Stanton. I serve as senior pastor at First Lutheran in Onalaska. This is my morning musing for today. I've resisted all temptation to make this a musing about the Green Bay Packers that are 3-0, so we'll just move on from there. So I've instead of looking in the past, looking into the future a bit. Tomorrow night is the first presidential debate between our current president and Joe Biden, and I've been thinking quite a bit about what those debates mean to me and what they maybe should mean to those still discerning their vote, and just how we do debates, how it reflects the current state of our politics and just how we do things in general. And it made me think of different debates that I've learned about or experienced myself. One of the first debates I remember watching was as a kid when Lloyd Benson was running for vice president against Dan Quayle. And there's a very famous line when Dan Quayle is kind of being compared to, or maybe he compared himself, I don't exactly remember, but because he's young and all that, he was being compared to John F. Kennedy. And Lloyd Benson, you might remember this, he says, I knew Jack Kennedy, you are no Jack Kennedy, kind of thing. And those one-liners, those zingers, are really what every debate I've ever watched, whether it's VP or for president, it's always like, okay, who's going to get the zingers in? Who's going to get those one-liners? I think of even like learning in school about a debate between JFK and Nixon, and how they were both, Nixon was very qualified. He'd been a vice president. He's running against this young upstart from Massachusetts who's far younger, far less qualified in many ways. And yet JFK won the debate because Nixon had 5 o'clock shadow. He didn't shave. And I remember learning about that and thinking, really? Like, how is a debate about whether or not a guy shaved? What does that have to do with it? And I grew up in Illinois until I was 10, and so I learned a lot about Lincoln in those formative years. I remember going to Springfield and Salem and all those places to see where Lincoln had done a lot, and I learned quite a bit about the Lincoln-Douglas debates. And in 1858, there were 9 different spots around the state of Illinois that each one would put an elector forward. This is how they chose senators back in the day. I'm not exactly sure how this all worked, but I know there were 9 spots or 9 regions. I want to say synod because I'm a pastor and we call our regions synods, but they weren't that. Anyway, they did a debate in 7 of the 9 regions because they'd already individually spoken in Chicago and Springfield. So they did 7 debates, and the format of each debate in the Lincoln-Douglas debates was one of them would speak for 60 minutes, the other would do a rebuttal of 90 minutes, and then the person who started the first 60 got the last 30 minutes. So it was a 3-hour debate. They did 7 of these, and there was no interrupting each other. There was no moderator. They would just speak, and they would offer thoughtful, completely thought out arguments for why they believed what they believed, mostly about slavery, because that was the main issue of the day, was about free states and slave states. But of course it was far broader than just that one issue. Think of that, 3 hours of uninterrupted, full train of thought. You'd really see and hear what a person believes and how they're going to lead, right? Tomorrow night's debate between Donald Trump and Joe Biden, I was looking at this, I looked it up. It's going to be a 90-minute debate. There's going to be 6 questions in 6 segments selected by a moderator, Chris Wallace. 15 minutes for each segment, for each topic. And each candidate gets 2 minutes to respond to each of the 6 questions before a back and forth. So there'll be a 15-minute segment where Trump gets to speak for 2 minutes, then Biden gets to speak for 2 minutes, and then they'll shout over each other for the next 11 minutes, with Wallace trying to help the one who's being shouted over to be able to get in there edgewise. 2-minute sound bites, followed by 11 minutes of I mean, just think of the difference between that and I speak for 60, then you for 90, then me for 30, and then we do it again in 6 other locations, which was covered by press, by the way. And of course, the press was unfair back then too, as far as how they were covered. If it was a pro-Douglas paper, they would edit and make Douglas's comments much more polished, and then they would keep Lincoln's stuff unedited, and they'd even misspell things to make him look stupid. And the papers that supported Lincoln did the exact same thing to Douglas. So it's not like, they were doing it perfectly, but boy, oh boy, this feels like much more of a beauty contest competition thing than it does a way of helping us select the best president. And that's what I've been wondering. What part of the job requires our president to out-spectacle their opponent? Or maybe I should ask, what part of their job should out-spectacle their opponent? It feels like a beauty contest competition thing, because maybe it is. As I think of where is God in all this, because that's always my question as I think of these musing topics, I feel like God calls us to discern a candidate based on substance. But it's hard to get at the substance of what either of these people think and feel when they only get to speak for 2 minutes apiece and then are on the offensive, defensive for the rest of the time. So I guess where I'm at is, of all the tools I have to discern my vote, I'm just going to admit the debates are going to be a very limited tool.